The date is October 22nd in the year 2024. My name is Anita Hecht, and I have the great pleasure and honor of interviewing Sister Janice Thome to record some of your stories about Garden City and the work that you've done here over the many years. So thank you, and welcome to this interview.
Thank you.
So once again, welcome to this interview, and the particular focus, I think, is going to be on the work that you've done through the many, many years of serving the economic poor and those in need in this community. But to begin with, tell me a little bit about your family of origin, when and where you were born, where you grew up, who was in your family?
Okay. Well, I am from a family of German immigrants. I'm a third generation born in this country. And I was born in 1945, August the 28th, in Wichita, Kansas. And I grew up on a little farm between the airport of Wichita and Goddard. Mm-hmm. And we had what at that time was a large dairy farm because we had 60 head. And back then you didn't do that easily. And we sold our milk to an entity in Wichita. And I'm the oldest of 8. And we had a very good beginning, practical kinds of skills that we used in a farm, and went to the convent when I was 16.
Wow.
And became a Dominican Sister of Peace.
Well, before we get there, tell me a little bit more about the immigration story of your family. Do you know when they came from Germany?
They came in the 1880s and 90s. And it's on my mother's side, they were from 2 different ethnic groups in Germany. And so they didn't speak the same German. So she grew up with English because that's how they understood each other. My dad's family was speaking German a lot when I was little. And they were learning English, but they hadn't gotten real far. But when they started having grandchildren that were old enough to interact with, they wanted more English so that they could be able to talk to us. And so by the time I was 5, it was mostly in English when we were there.
So you did not learn German growing up?
No, I didn't.
Mm-hmm. And how did that feel to you?
Well, I was too little to think about it, I guess, way back. And then when I wasn't hearing German anymore, I didn't even think about it.
I think you told me at some point, though, you felt like there was a loss of culture or language that
the more as an adult, and I could see the richness in families and persons who had their background a part of their life, that I felt like I got cheated out of it. But also the problem was when it was the World War, Germany was the enemy. And so I think a lot of the Germans like to kind of wash themselves of that so they wouldn't be seen as being part of that.
Right. It's interesting.
So history took part of it as well.
Yeah. Tell me about religion in your family.
I am Catholic, and all my family is. And we went to the Catholic school in our little town, Schulte, through 8th grade, and then I went into Wichita for my beginning of high school.
Did you commute, or did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was then Sacred Heart Academy, which is now Kansas Newman.
And what motivated you to join the Dominican?
My story makes no sense whatsoever.
Your story makes no sense?
No. My dad's dad would not let the kids go to high school because he said that children that went to high school became lazy louts, and he didn't want his children to be lazy. So my dad was, I think, the most intelligent, and he just was felt so robbed of it. In fact, when I was doing my algebra at freshman year, he wanted to do it with me because he was so fascinated by it. So when I had 8th grade graduation, we had it at Mass, and then we came home, and all my aunts and uncles from both sides and my grandparents were there. So somewhere in the middle of the meal, one of my aunts asked me, what was I going to do? And I'm thinking, oh, I must be retarded. I haven't even thought about the question, let alone have an answer. And it makes no sense to ask that of an eighth grader, but they didn't do anything beyond it in school, so it made sense to her. Well, I'm one of these people that can't be too worried about something for too long. So it was on my head that night when I was going to bed. And I said, well, I haven't thought about it. So God, just help me when I'm supposed to make the decision to make the right one. And I decided every time I went to Mass and communion, after communion, I would ask God that. So it was every Sunday. Then when I went into high school, at a Catholic high school, we had Mass every day. So 6 days a week, I'm asking God that. So in December of my freshman year, I'm at one end of the table making pancakes, so I know it was a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And at the other end is my dad reading the newspaper, which he always did before supper. And so my brother comes in from doing the chores and he says, Janice, excuse me, he said, Sister Rosalia asked the girls if they wanted to go to prep school, that she could get them an application. So Diane and Karen said they wanted to do so. And out of my mouth, without thinking it, I said, maybe I should too. So my dad brings down the newspaper and looks like, you want to say some more about it? And I flip pancakes really fast. Nothing was said about it at all. So after that, on Sunday, we went to Mass. And after Mass, we always went to the little grocery store to get the few things that we needed to buy. So as Dad parks, he said, did you talk to Sister Rosalia? And I said, I didn't know I was supposed to. And so he said, well, if you want to go to prep school, you probably ought to. So he goes in, he and Mom go into the store, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh dear, now what do I do? So I decided, well, I could ask for it and just not do it. So when they got in the car, he asked if I wanted to go back up to the convent, and I said yes. So I go in and ask for that.
Okay.
And she brings it, and after that, it was like, well, I might as well go and try it out. And then if I don't like it, fine, I'll at least know.
Yeah.
So it took me 3 months in the sophomore year of high school at Great Bend to decide this was for me.
Interesting. And I'm sure there's a lot more we could talk about that story. Why did you choose the Dominican order?
Because the sisters had taught me all those 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I had cousins in another religious community, but this one just seemed to speak to my heart more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was going on in the world at that time and in the order? It was the early 60s, is that right?
61 is when I entered, yes. Well, nothing had changed much yet, but when Vatican II started with the church, then a whole lot of changes came. And it was step by step, nothing drastically or dramatic, but step by step we were led into what I would call the religious life of the future. And religious life has morphed over all the centuries into different levels, and it's going to do so again. But that allowed us to get into a deeper sense of our call and where we were being led.
Can you describe a little bit about that call, maybe some of the options or the types of service that Vatican II or the order had for you all?
Well, as Dominicans, one of our things is to study and to use the fruits of that study in our lives. And so we studied all the documents of Vatican II. And the Peace and Justice document is what led me to where I am today, and us as a community into the future as well. And so as we discussed all of that, we decided that we were being called to really serve the poor, because that was one of the big pieces of that. And so step by step, we worked into that dedication. And so the first one is whatever you were doing, be aware of the poor. So I was teaching, and it would be a child, let's say, that had very poor social skills. And I actually had a child at that point that was just unable to interact with the other children. And so to have a heart for that person and help them in whatever way you can. And then we went step by step until we got to the point of we wanted to serve the economic poor with a special ministry. And we spent a weekend doing the discerning about that. And they asked anybody that thought they might want to do it to be a part of it. Plus, I was a part of the group that was focused on the peace and justice areas anyway. So I was there for that too. And so we did the discernment. We decided it was going to be called the Ministry of Presence. We are to be present to the person that's poor, and they are to tell us what they are in need of, and we're to help them find it if it exists, and if it doesn't, we're to invent it. So we are probably the only religious women in the United States that need a pickup for our ministry, because we take in used furniture and give it away. And so then after we got that all set up, they said, now, if you think you ever want to do it, give us your name, because we don't want to start it if we don't have people that want to do it. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting older. By the time I'm 60, high school kids aren't going to believe in me anymore because I'll be too old.
So just for the record, when you came out of the convent, you started teaching, and you taught for quite a while, right?
Well, it's not out of the convent.
Well, correct me.
Yeah.
Just to bring us up to...
When I went into a ministry,
yeah,
I was a teacher, because at that time we could be a teacher or a nurse, and I didn't like blood. And so I was going to be a teacher. And I don't know why, but I wanted to be a high school teacher. And they said, no, you teach grade school first. And if you're good, you can teach high school. Now, that makes no sense now, but that's what they thought. So I did start teaching. So I've taught grades 3 through 12 over 25 years. And my favorites were 7th and 8th and 11th and 12th.
So you knew yourself pretty well. Why do you think that age was attractive to you?
Well, they tell me that I get along with teenagers well because I never really grew up. And what happened for me is those early years I was teaching like 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And this is the time in the late 60s when our universities like KU, K-State, Hayes, whatever, were saying, okay, we've got more domestic violence, divorce, child abuse, child neglect, we've got to do something. And so they put in classes on child development and on family living. And I decided that's what I wanted to do, because had worked with enough kids that came from that, and I could give them safety and dignity for 7 hours a day, and then they went right back to it. And so I began to take my extra hours of college to renew my teaching certificate in those two areas so that I could teach it.
And you taught for how many years?
25.
25. So bring me to Garden City. When did Garden City enter the picture?
Back when we were talking about the ministry with the poor, okay? So at the time I was teaching in Oklahoma City, which was the only time I taught outside of Kansas. I was teaching in Kansas otherwise. Well, I was down there, another sister and I went down there, and then she decided to retire. So I was the only Dominican sister of my community in the state of Oklahoma, which makes no sense when it's supposed to be community living. So I decided it was time to come back to Kansas. Well, I couldn't find a position at a Catholic high school, and I would probably get fired.
Fired, okay.
Then I decided I would probably get fired if I took a position at a public school, because I don't believe in abortion and all that sort of thing. And divorce isn't the answer to everything either. And so I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and go into this ministry then. And so, well, I didn't say why we chose Garden City, though, so before, so I better say that now. We chose Garden City as to be the area where we were going to do this ministry of presence, because we had a platform here of our sisters. Way back in 1931, Dominican sisters followed the request of 2 doctors that had started a small hospital to begin a hospital here, because it was more than they could handle with the growing population here. And we had sisters start the St. Mary's School and the St. Dominic School, and so that we had a footing. At that time, in 1994, there were more people below poverty line here, number-wise, than in Wichita, although it was 10 times bigger. And so we decided we would come here because we would have the awareness of people that who we are and what we're about, and then we would have plenty of people that would need it. And I was to be half-time and get another position.
Had you heard of Garden City? Did you know anything about it before you came here?
Definitely.
What did you know about it?
Well, I'd come out to visit our sisters here, had meetings and so forth. And I had been on our council for a while and had been out here for meetings with the hospital and so forth. So yes, I'd been here not a whole lot of times, but enough to know.
What was happening in Garden City at the time? You arrived in 1996, is that right?
Right, in the fall. Well, I think to get into that, we need to know what started the whole thing out here.
Yeah.
Back in the 1970s, late 1970s, a beef packing plant, approached the powers that be wanting to start a plant out here. And so they got together leaders from the city, the county, different organizations, civic organizations, the school district, about anybody they could think of, and said, what are we going to do? It's a wonderful opportunity for our town, our area, to bring in a business that's this big, and it will grow. And if we say no, it would go to somebody else and we'll probably die. And then they said, if we say yes, it's bringing those people in, because you don't have to have any kind of education to do processing of beef. They're going to be people that are poor, people that have no education or very small amount of education. They're going to have all kinds of needs. And some minister that was in the group is supposed to have said, okay, if we say yes, are we going to call those people a blessing or a curse? And it went deadly quiet at that point. And then they began the discussion of how to make it a blessing. And so they decided that they wanted to get to know all the social services that would exist for a person in need and have those groups to know each other as well. So they started what's called the Community Services Council. And it meets once a month, and it has done so ever since 1979 until this day. And after I get through with this, I'm going to the monthly meeting of it. And all of the social service agencies are invited to be there. And we talk about anything new that we are experiencing or doing, and reach out to each other for that service for a certain family or whatever. And so it's been a very great bond to us, because when we came out, we went to each of these community services to talk about it. And it ended up being something that we didn't expect as a gift to us, because not only did we know them, they knew we were going to be here, and we were outside the box, so to speak, of all the other groups, because we didn't have something that made us be real strict about things. Just the person was in need and we were to help them. And so when we came back, well, then we went to Mexico to learn Spanish because neither of us spoke it. So we did a 3-month immersion down there and then came back. And so we had people being referred to us from the beginning because they knew that we were here.
Can you talk a little bit about the services that were needed and maybe a few specific stories at the beginning that you remember?
Well, I know that at that time there was nobody doing furniture. And so we have a pick up used furniture and give it away in a storage unit where we put something if we've got it extra. Rides to medical appointments. If I get referred to Dodge or Pratt or Wichita or Hayes, people that didn't have a car, didn't have a driver's license, didn't have money for gas, couldn't get there. And so we began to do that. Also transportation for immigration appointments. And so that was a real gift. Now, the Medicaid does provide transportation now, but it didn't until probably, I think it was something like 5 or 6 years ago that they began to do so. But we have people that aren't on it, and so we still do that type of transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So those were, I think, the main ones that we brought new to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sister Rosarita started doing driver's education. So helping people study the book and pass the test and then practice driving. And there was no entity that was doing anything like that either.
Mm.
She also, when they began to start this Medicare open enrollment and that sort of thing, she became trained in that. And so she does a lot of that every year.
I have a lot of questions. I want to go back a little bit to ask you any stories you heard of about how these sort of powers that were at the time made Garden City attractive to the industry that they were trying to get here. I think you had told me one story about that. Do you remember any stories about teenagers and going to work or not going to work?
Oh, one of the things that they decided is that if a family comes in where the parents never finished high school and they're poor, they're going to want the child that turned 16 to go to work. And they didn't want that. So they agreed, the powers that be and all of the different entities, that they would not allow a child at 16 to be working for them, except on the weekend or in the evening,
Mm-hmm.
so that they would stay in
School.
school and have an education.
Trying to break that cycle
Right.
of poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And you wanted a story about that sort of thing, and I can give you one.
Yeah, I do.
And it crosses both of my ministries. I was at the court with an elderly lady that had to be there, and I was interpreting in Spanish what was going on in the case before her so she could get some kind of a feel for what was going to come for her. Well, there was a couple sitting on the other side of the room, and he decided that he needed me to do that for him. So he talked to this man that he somehow knew and asked that man to ask me if I could stay and do that. And so I said, well, if you give me a ride to where my car is, because it's being repaired. And so he said he would. So I didn't have any idea what his charges were or anything. So he had been driving and intoxicated. So I helped him through the beginnings of the next case so he could see kind of what the thing was. And then he went up for his deal. Okay, so then they take me to the house because the wife needed to be back with the kids. And they lived in this little tiny apartment close to the park. And then I somehow, when they needed something, they called me. I had given them my phone number. And so I helped them with food boxes from Emmaus House for a while. They moved out to a trailer park. And I began to, at times, help them with other things. Well, I did not know it, that he was a very abusive husband. And so at some point down the road, when she got through with a pregnancy and went for her first appointment after pregnancy, they found her with a sexually transmitted disease. And so he had to go in. So when I take her home, she said, just stay in the car and I will tell him. Well, then she sent one of the kids out to get me because he wasn't going to go. So I went in and talked to him, and he didn't want to go. And I said, well, I think you have to. You might have to get arrested if you don't. Well, then he finally went. So we drive up to Janice's, and he's just going to get out of the car and I can go. I said, no, I need to go in and see about how long it will take you. Well, I don't need a ride back. And I said, fine. But I walked him in because I figured he'd just walk off otherwise. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they go through all of that. And then he decides that he's going to leave her because obviously he's got somebody else. And so then I'm with her and continuing the food boxes and so forth. And finally, at some point, she told me about the abuse. And I listened to her and, that sort of thing. Okay, so then fast forward, the oldest daughter that was 7, the day I did the court thing, gets married and has her first child, and she knows I do parents as teachers, so she had me start with her. Okay, so for 10 years, I served her in my parents as teachers role. The 4th child just graduated this summer, but she is in a marriage where they have had to work through some issues because she didn't want the kids ever hit. And he spanked, so they had to work that through. So only spanked when it was a really dangerous kind of thing. And one of the most beautiful memories I have is when the 2nd child was 4. He was kind of his own kind of kid. And if he did something wrong, she would say his name and wait till he looked at her. And she would say, "Don't do that again." Or she would say, "You better, pick that up," or whatever. And he would stand there and you could see all over his face, he was deciding to blow up or calm down. If he calmed down, he would just go ahead and do whatever. If he was going to blow up, he took himself to his bedroom and wouldn't come out till he was calm. So she'd changed the whole discipline, the whole manner of living.
Wow. That's quite a success story.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
And I want to hear more about parents as teachers. I think that's a really important part of what you do. Mm-hmm. So let's get there. I did have a question about when all the new immigrants come in, you hear these stories about those powers that were making the city attractive. Did you hear stories also about people who didn't like the growth or didn't want it, or did you encounter attitudes about those people?
Mm-hmm. The clearest one that I can tell you is back maybe after 3 to 5 years of us being here, mm-hmm. This one man one day exploded at me. "You and Sister Rosarita are doing so much here in Garden City, and you're on the wrong side in everything." And I just kind of froze. And I said, "Well, I'm sorry if that's the way you feel." And that was about the end of the situation. Well, later that day, I went to one of the agencies, and the guy that was in the office there, the head of it, I told him the story, and I told him the person's name. And I said, "I need to know if that's a compliment or an insult." He said when he was a younger man, it would have been a terrible insult, but he's changed an awful lot. So take it as a compliment and don't change anything. So yes, there are some people that don't like it. But a lot of people, like we have people that offer to do transportation here in town, or some of them outside of town, to help us out. Or when I've got to be out of town, I do the food boxes every Wednesday and Friday. Mm-hmm. I was 5 families, now I'm down to 4 families that I do that for. So I have people that will take those and do that for me.
Mm-hmm. So you see a real benefit of having this immigrant population here.
Well, yes, it's enriching to everybody. Mm-hmm. And one of the stories somebody told me, because I wasn't there at the time, 2 guys were roommates at the university. And freshmen are always trying to find friends, new friends, and so forth. So one night, this guy came over to the apartment, and the white guy let him in, and they started talking. And then his roommate came out, and the man left really fast. And so the next day, he said, "What was that black guy doing in your apartment?" He said, "He's my roommate." And he walked off without another word. So this was normal. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing a webcast kind of thing that they did at the high school. And this kid, his family was getting trying to make the decision whether to go back to South America, to the country they came from, or not, because of some family stuff that was going on. And the other students, who are all US citizens of different nationalities and so forth, were just so upset that that would have to happen. And so I think children growing up here, color, language, all that, it's just a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think children in this area, people in this area, are more prepared for a good interaction with the humanity, no matter what.
They have a better understanding of the shared humanity.
Because it's all they ever see.
Yeah.
And at our parents as teachers office is in the middle of the 3 to 5 year old school, preschool. And you walk down the hallway, you see every color that can be, and the hijabs on some of the little girls and other native type dressing. It's just part of life.
Yeah.
They don't think anything of it.
Let's talk a little bit about parents as teachers, and then we'll come back to sort of the rich diversity here. Tell me about that program, the history of it, how you got involved.
The history of it starts in St. Louis, where they knew that children were coming to school without basic skills that they should have had. And so it's 40 years in the making. And they started it in that area. I think it was 5 school districts that they did it with. And over time, they have refined it again and again, the curriculum. And the philosophy of it is, if you think about the child at birth and the child at 5, everything that child has learned, the parents have taught them. So they're the first teachers and the most important teachers, because brain research shows that the first 2 years, the brain is most growing, most active, and needs the stimulation. And so it's a monthly or bi-monthly visit in the home. And we take materials for the parents to read, activities to do with their child. And so they have the awareness of what at age 3 months should be done for the child and with the child. And we do the assessments
Along the way.
all along the way in social emotional, language, cognitive, and
Behavioral?
social emotional, cognitive, motor, and language.
Okay.
Assessments of all of that.
Okay.
So that we can say your child is at age level or it's needing some extra help in this area.
So you started that soon after you got here too?
Yes. Well, I came in August of 96 and then went to Mexico in January of 97 and then started with PAT after I came back in June of 97.
And where did you work mostly? Was it all over, or were there certain communities in the city that you went to for this?
We just, anybody that wants it, we do it.
And they signed up for it or asked for it, or how did you?
They asked for it. Some of the doctor's offices have our little flyer there. And sometimes the doctor will refer them to us or to Russell Child Development Center. If the child has big needs, it's to them. If it's looking like the child's starting not to succeed in some way, they can refer them to us. So we have a very full schedule right now. There's 8 of us doing it. And I specialize with teen parents.
With teen parents?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to ask
because
you about
of my
that.
background with high school stuff.
Because you never grew up.
Right.
Well, what were the results, or what are the results of do you see teen pregnancy still being very high? Did you notice a change in the rates of?
Back in the late 90s, the hospital was having more and more teen parents coming in to have babies. And so they set up a committee to try to figure out what we could do to lessen that. And because I was with parents as teachers with teens, I was a part of that. And so for 3 years, we did parent group meetings at various parts of town at various schools in the evening to talk about the things parents could do to prevent it, to help the teens make better decisions and so forth. They did a lot with the doctor's offices and referred them to parents as teachers and to other services. That effort gradually brought it down because at the time when they started this, we were in the top 3 percentage-wise in the state of Kansas for having teen pregnancies, and it was really, really awful. And so that gradually came down. And so what they said at that time after 3 years is, what other health disparities are there that we need to be addressing? So that was the beginning of what now is called Live Well Finney County. And it has grown in all kinds of ways. One example would be when there was a trailer park outside of town. The owner was the head of all the services there. Well, the water was being contaminated and people were getting sick. And when they let him know that, because the doctors told the persons that were getting sick they needed bottled water and so forth, he wasn't doing anything. So Live Well bought bottled water for him and delivered it and kept working with the guy to get him to do what he needed to do. Also, people not getting their immunizations, they've worked with that. People that aren't getting their children the stimulation they need, doing like play groups out in some of the trailer parks, different parts of town, trying to get the walking trails, and now there's a new skate park that they were a part of. Just all kinds of things like that. And smoking in teens, they're now working on that. And they did work on alcohol with teens too. So it's just whatever comes up, they've been doing.
Wonderful.
Yes, it's very.
And that has a correlation to decline in teen pregnancy, you think, just all of that?
Well, that's what started as having the idea of this community effort to work on health disparities.
Talk to me about some of what you learned about other people's cultures and the different groups that you've worked with.
Well, in my 28 years in Garden City, I've helped people born in 30 different countries. And I only know a little Spanish, so am not able to talk to them in their own language, but I have to get somebody else to do that, with one exception. I had a Haitian lady last month who needed help, and she had on her cell an interpreting thing. So she'd speak her French or Creole. I don't know what she was doing because she didn't know Spanish. The other Haitians I've worked with, they knew some Spanish, so I could get by. But she'd put her language in, and then it'd put it in English and vice versa. And so that was wonderful.
Artificial intelligence.
You got it. You got it. You got it. And with parents as teachers, you're in the home, so you don't want to do anything that's going to be disrespectful. So the Burmese do not want you to touch their child's head, because only people that are friends and family can do that. It's very disrespectful. There are cultures in South America and in Africa and in Asia, not all of them, but some, that think your shoes, your feet are the dirtiest part of your body. So the shoes stay outside the door. So when I go to a house like that, I start taking my shoes off when they answer the door. Now, some of them will say, you don't have to. And if they say that in a way that seems very normal, I don't. But if they seem a little tense, I go ahead and take them off anyway. One family that was Pashto, which is from Afghanistan, didn't want me to sit on the floor. And we do sit on the floor for our activities with parents as teachers. Now, I don't know if it's because I'm so old, or if I'm a woman, or if it's just adults don't sit on the floor. So I didn't do it till about the 5th appointment. And about in the middle of it, I asked him, and he said yes. Well, after that, it was okay for me to sit on the floor, and he would sit down there with me. So you work through that type of thing. And I have a family that was observing Ramadan. So you don't, several activities in Parents as Teachers involve eating. So you don't do that during Ramadan because the parent can't model for the child the eating because they can't have anything except at night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So all different kinds of things like that.
Did you find out some of these things the hard way, or how?
One of them the hard way. The lady that I had talked about earlier that I was taking food boxes to, I'd given her food boxes for 10 years. And you go in with the box in the kitchen, and sometimes I helped her unload it or whatever. So I was familiar with that. Okay, well, then when she had a baby, she wanted Parents as Teachers. So I'm there, and my supervisor comes once a year to see what you're doing. Well, I needed something, a couple of items from the kitchen, and I couldn't, in my best Spanish, get her to understand what it was that I was supposed to need. And so I went into the kitchen with her and helped her find it. Afterwards, on the way back to the office, she told me that was very disrespectful. That's private. You don't do that sort of thing. So I felt terrible for invading her privacy and so forth. So yes, the hard way.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And in general, did you feel, though, that people were pretty receptive to whatever services you were offering, either through Parents as Teachers or the Ministry of Presence, that you were welcomed?
Oh, yes, yes. Because they are in need of whatever it is. Now, there are needs we can't meet, and they aren't too happy about that. Like we don't do rent unless it includes utilities.
Okay.
Because we don't have the kind of money it would take to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are disappointed, of course. But often I will say, well, then it doesn't include utilities, so I can still give you something for utilities for your next bill, and that will help you toward the rent.
Mm-hmm.
Have that extra money.
Mm-hmm. Are there other needs you see that are beyond what you do in terms of, let's say, paths to citizenship? How do you see the legal system being supportive or not supportive of people's desire to stay here?
Well, we can't change the system at all. I can take people to Wichita for their next appointment, but I can't change what's going on there.
And what is going on? I think you've probably seen this up close in terms of what barriers or obstacles there are to being here.
Well, there's no path to being legal yet, unless you have some way to prove that you're going to get killed when you go back home or something like that. But the ordinary person can say, you know, it's awful in my country, but they can't prove that they themselves are a target. And so you're here, you're without legal status. You have to find a job that you have to do, that you can do, that doesn't demand that you have a work permit. Mm-hmm. And often you're underpaid for that job. It's just an never-ending cycle.
Do you have any thoughts about how it could be fixed?
Well, it's not just me, okay? But there's a group of people that are, let's say, over 50. What we would like to do is say, okay, you want to come to the U.S., you come to the border, you pay $250 or $500, and we draw blood. Send it through FBI. If you've got no problem, then you can get a work permit, ID, that allows you to be here legally with no status except you can work for 2 years or 3 years. After that time, if you've done nothing wrong, illegal, or whatever, then you can start the residency process. Now, that's going to take 3 years, and then you got to pass your citizenship. I mean, it's nothing,
it's a long-term commitment, right?
Mm-hmm. But it's a beginning. And that way, people that are those kind of people, like the cartels, the druggies, and so forth, they're not going to want to give blood. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be traced. So it'd be a way to do that. It would be humane to the people wanting to come. And after all, our ancestors came and all they had to do is prove they weren't contagious. Nobody helped them, but they didn't get targeted for anything or sent away. And it would be more humane to our border patrol so they don't have to be doing these ugly things to the people that are coming.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of common sense to me.
Well, and we have this one nation under God with liberty and justice for all, and that would be starting to live it.
Right, right. Tell me a little bit more about the ministry of presence. I feel like we glossed over that a little bit too quickly. Are there?
Well, Sister Rosarita and I meet every Thursday morning to talk about new things we've experienced, get each other's ideas. If we've got something brand new that's coming up, come forward. What are we going to do about this? How do we handle it? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a reflection piece also to continue to anchor into the mission itself.
Have you seen the needs of people changing over the years?
Well,
they usually
the changes are in some of the things that outside entities have changed. So, like the medical thing, we have less medical transportation because the Medicaid card for like children, they can supply the transport, or they can pay, I think it's 55 cents a mile to the family for it. So we don't have that much to do with that anymore. The regulations allow certain things that they didn't allow before. So providing some of the medicine at a much lower rate. So, and Sister Rosarita does the medicine, providing the prescription medicines. And so less of that is happening because more of it's being covered by their insurance. And like the process for immigration, they now are doing more over the phone, so they don't have to go to Wichita. As it used to be every 3 months, then every 6 months, then every year. And now they can do it checking in on the phone. And they have to be in their home at a certain time, a certain day of the week, and answer it, so that the office knows by technology that that's indeed where they are.
What do you think you've learned in doing all this work about what works, and what are your strengths?
I think what works is human beings being able to touch base honestly and walk together toward a solution. That's the basis of anything.
I imagine you've seen a lot of suffering.
Oh, yes, definitely.
What do you think is kind of the hardest suffering to address, to combat?
Death of a child. One of the ladies I helped, this is a number of years ago, the child died of infant death. And she was sleeping in the bed with the mother, which should not have been done, but the mother didn't know that. And she said, I should have awakened. I should have known that she was struggling. And so I had to continue to tell her, they just quit breathing. There is no struggle. She would not have moved. She would not have made a sound. There is no way you could know. I didn't say she shouldn't have been in bed with you, but she didn't need that already. And so gradually, after saying it over and over again, she began to let go of that. It's hard enough to lose that child without blaming yourself.
Well, is there something you do that helps you get through some of what you witness in suffering?
Oh, yes. Lots of prayer, asking God to give me the next words, the next action with that particular situation. My daily prayer time. Exercise. I got to get that out of me. And sometimes just go and yell where nobody can hear me to get it out of me if I really feel conflicted about what happened.
Yeah. Are there certain systemic problems that you really would like to see fixed?
Well, already we talked about the immigration piece. Definitely that.
Okay.
And I think just the whole humanity, treating each other as an equal human being.
Do you have any ideas about how to open people's minds to that? If there is a lot of narrow-mindedness around race or difference, cultural difference. Have you seen people change in your work here in terms of their own attitudes towards people who
I've
are
seen a few
very
people,
different than them?
right, that have begun to, because they got an experience of a one-on-one
Mm-hmm.
that made them realize that that kind of person is a human being and wanting to reach out.
That's interesting. So really that person-to-person direct
Right.
experience is important
Yeah.
in shifting attitudes. What would you advise others in doing this kind of work, in doing service?
Open-mindedness, open-heartedness,
Mm-hmm.
because you're always going to have some situation you never faced before and have no clue about. And being willing to reach out to other persons that might have some idea, or like we brainstorm, Sister Rosarita and I, to say, okay, what ideas can you come up with? And sometimes things come right away, and sometimes it takes a while.
That's where you have to keep asking like you did.
Right.
What am I going to do with my life? And the answer came.
Right.
Right? What do you think the root causes of some of this poverty are that you see, economic poverty?
Well, part of it is a lack of real education to begin with. And part of it, I think, is what parents as teachers is trying to do is get the child to be interacted with in positive ways so that they can develop all of their own potential.
Mm-hmm.
And then that allows them to get a good education and a well-rounded life because they've had the emotional and the psychological development as well as the other areas taken care of. Definitely addictions are a big problem. And so whatever can be done to prevent them getting started is an important piece of it too.
Mm-hmm.
And if education, if peace at home were not a part of it, my own life, then I don't know how to have it for my children unless I really make intentional efforts for that. And the family I talked about earlier, they actually for a while went to Compass to talk about the discipline and how they wanted to do it to help them work through that piece.
And Compass is another service.
Area mental health.
Okay, area mental health. Could you talk a little bit about the different areas of service that work together in Garden City? There's Compass.
There's Compass, there's Genesis, which is a clinic for the people below poverty line.
Mm-hmm.
There is
a medical clinic.
A medical clinic,
Okay.
Yes. They also have a dental clinic. They now have that going as well. And you have the Kansas workforce. And actually the director of that is the head of our Community Services Council. You have also the school district involved, the hospital involved, and the school district has a office set up to work with the different incoming groups. And they try, as a school district, when a new group comes, to get an interpreter that can help the verbal interpreting, but also the customs and the culture interpreting for them. Mm-hmm. So that, like when the Pashto people started coming, they are a tribe out of Afghanistan, and these were men that helped our military. Mm-hmm. And when Taliban took over, they were going to get killed, so they came here. And then some of them had brought their families. And so this Pashto interpreter was doing the verbal interpreting, but also the cultural interpreting. Them of our culture and us of their culture. And that's a very good service that they do. Unfortunately, fortunately for him, he was able to bring his family, but that was 9 more people. And they couldn't find space big enough, so they went to Wichita, so we lost him. And that was harder for me because I had to use the online interpreting for my PAT visit with my family, which isn't near as good as somebody that is right there.
Right,
Mhm.
right. I think you had mentioned also that you were challenged in some way with the PAT because now teens need to get their parents' permission.
Yes, the school district
That
decided
changed?
that the girl under 18 or the dad under 18 needed the parents' permission for me to work with them. And it wasn't being given, so I wasn't getting any more teens. And so the counselor said no matter what they tried, the parents had become like helicopter parents. They feel like they have totally messed up with their daughter, that she got pregnant, and so they wanted to take total control over things and didn't want me to be a part of it. So that was a problem. And then I had one family break through that, and now I have a couple of 18-year-olds, so they said they wanted it, and I can do that.
But before it wasn't required?
No, because I'm a school district employee, and they don't have to have that permission for anybody else.
I see. So that's a change that hasn't been so positive for
Right.
you. Are there other things that like that you wish systemically? I know we talked about immigration and path to
Immigration's the
citizenship
other one, yeah.
a little
Right.
bit. Anything else that you would change systemically if you could wave your magic wand?
Well, I would like to not have people that are working be mistreated by saying you don't have any authority to work. You have no work permit, so I can cheat you out of your money. But if we changed our immigration system, that would be taken care of.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there's not. And we've had a couple of times where there's been human trafficking for labor through here. And when that got broken up, everybody was like, can't believe it, but it was there. And right before they broke through and figured that out, I had gotten some mattresses from our mother house in Great Bend, and we took some to a trailer. There were 7 guys living in a single bedroom trailer, had nothing to sleep on. So the mattresses were like an absolute gift. Now, when they went to bed, there couldn't be much floor space at all with 7 of them there. And they were so desperately thin. So you knew that they'd gone through a lot in their country and then got here and were victims of this whole mess.
Tell me a little bit more about what that means, the human trafficking. What was actually happening?
If I'm the trafficker, and this was a couple here in town in this situation, I go down to the border. The wife was going to the border and picking up people that wanted to come to the U.S. to work. And then I don't know if they were the actual powers that be or if they did it for someone else. That never got really explained. But then there are people who will hire them that pay them $6 an hour or something like that. And sometimes even not at all. And
So
sometimes
they have no rights at all.
No. Unless they went to the powers that be. And when this got taken care of, some people did go to Catholic Charities, which is another one of the services here in town. And Catholic Charities talked them through what to do about being a person that could testify, and assured them that they would not get, damaged because of it or whatever. And then some others just fled the country or went to someplace else here because they were too scared to go to the police and say, this is what happened to me, I'm one of the people.
It's a catch-22 because if you're undocumented, you have the fear of being caught,
Right.
And then it's harder to come forward.
Well, my understanding, and I might be wrong, is I think they got some kind of a protection order for the people that were testifying, that they would not have to be deported at this point.
In your experience, are a lot of the immigrants who come here undocumented, who come to work in the packing plants or?
Well, you can't work in the packing plant for Tyson without documents.
Okay.
So not that. But there are some, I don't know what percentage.
Yeah. there's other work that they're doing then.
Yes, field work. You can work at a dairy. You can work at a feedlot, cleaning, yard work, all kinds of things like that.
Yeah.
And you don't need English for many of them.
Right. Do you have any words of advice for people who want to be teen educators?
Have a lot of patience and be able to go with the flow as things come, because sometimes what starts out being absolutely insane ends up being a teaching moment. So patience a lot.
What haven't I asked you about that you want to talk about, either in the Ministry of Presence or the Community Services Council or Parents as Teachers?
Well, I think one thing that I didn't tell you was that the Dominican Sisters had this whole network of things, and so that's what we could build upon. Parents as Teachers, we went to the national conference last week and gave a presentation on the question you asked of how we adapt the program for the different cultures, and gave it in both Spanish and English. And so the educators that were better in Spanish liked that very much. And then they gave another one on how to do the kind of interaction verbally with families, so that you are listening and then building on what they say. And they were well received as well.
So you become a national educator.
Well, it's a national program, but we didn't have the money to go before, but we did this time.
Wow. Is that something you like to do?
It's fine. I wouldn't do it every year unless it's closer, because it was pretty expensive. But anyway.
Tell me a little bit now about Garden City and what kind of a place it's been for you to live in, what makes it unique, how you've seen changes. You've been here.
The uniqueness is the whole cultural variety and the celebration of the cultures. The Mexican fiesta we just had, and the Independence Day another time, and so forth. So the cultural norms, the cultural foods, you can get about one of anything. There's an East African restaurant now, so that makes it unique. You can say hi to anybody, and they respond unless there's somebody that's having problems. The effort to make everything welcoming to whomever. The improvements, like I said, about healthy activities outdoors. I love nature, and so that's a big, important part of me. The one person said, "You can see forever." And I said, "Yeah, and they say only in Kansas is the sky so big because there's nothing to block it. No mountains, everything." And the gal that does the, it's driving safety classes that you have to get every 3 years for the school district. She says, "Now I know it says to look to the horizon in front of you and behind you, but in Kansas that's a mile. Otherwise it'd be 10 miles. So it's unique that way."
It is unique that way. Any fears that you have about things you see happening in Garden City, or just whether it's environmental or social, cultural, anything that...
Well, I know that the drug trafficking area is something that people are focused on now, like with live well and so forth, and the law enforcement and so forth. And so getting that under control would be very important to us.
Anything else that worries you?
Well, our political mess, that we can't seem to see that every human being has a right to be where they feel safe.
You're talking about nationally now.
Right. Yes, nationally.
Is Garden City, would you say, more conservative or liberal? I mean, we're right up against a presidential election.
Well, I know that there are pockets of both. But I think we have a wider heart than most places because we have the experience of seeing each other as humans over all these years. So I think we are more open to like immigration change because we see the damage of the current system on so many people.
Right, right.
And children should not have that.
There's a lot of damage that can be done to children when they're not safe. Yeah.
Because their parents don't feel safe.
Right, right. Anything else I haven't asked you? Hopes that you want, wishes that you want to share for the future of this place?
Well, it would help this place and the whole nation if we could do something about the immigration mess, that's for sure.
Do you think that, well, you said it's not closing the border, it's not deporting people, it's giving them a pathway.
Right, finding a way that takes care of sorting out the people we don't want from the people that would be positive additions for us, yeah.
So that's your hope?
Right.
That's what you pray for? Okay.
One nation under God with liberty and justice for all.
Agreed. How is it to be interviewed?
Not my favorite thing.
Not your favorite thing. Well, I think you did a great job. Is there anything else you'd like to close with?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully this helps people open up their minds and hearts.
Thank you, Sister Janice.
You're very welcome.